Friends, if you want to watch the action-packed, dark fantasy movie Underworld, Evolution, 2006, in English, then make sure to like this video. And if you're visiting our channel for the first time, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update. In today's video, we are going to talk about Underworld, Evolution, the thrilling sequel in the iconic Underworld franchise. We'll cover everything you need to know about this movie, what the story is, where you can watch it, and some of the most interesting facts related to it. I'll also be telling you on which OTT platform or satellite channel this film is available, so make sure you stay tuned till the end. In addition to that, we'll dive into the technical side of the movie, its cinematography, background music, pre-production, filming, post-production, budget, and box office performance. We'll also take a deep look at the film's storyline, talk about the characters, their performances, and the roles they've played. And yes, I'll also share a brief review of the story and my thoughts on how this sequel lives up to the original. So friends, if you are a fan of vampires, werewolves, and gothic action, then this video is just for you. Watch till the end for a complete breakdown of Underworld, Evolution, 2006. Let's begin. Narrative structure and progression. From a structural standpoint, Underworld, Evolution largely adheres to a conventional three-act format, but it uses flashbacks and ancestral memory to enrich its mythological backstory. The story begins in the 1200s, showing the origin of the vampire and lichen lines through the twin brothers Marcus and William Corvinus, sons of Alexander Corvinus, the first immortal. Marcus becomes the first vampire, William, the first werewolf. This ancient flashback sets the stage for the present-day conflict. Act I, the catalyst, awakening of the past. The movie transitions to the present, following Celine, Kate Beckinsale, and Michael Corvin, Scott Speedman, the first hybrid of vampire and lichen bloodlines. They are on the run after having killed Victor, one of the vampire elders. Meanwhile, Marcus Corvinus, Tony Curran, the last remaining vampire elder, awakens from centuries of sleep, mutated into a winged, grotesque vampire due to the blood of a lichen entering his system. Marcus's awakening is the main catalyst for the narrative, introducing a new, more personal threat. Unlike Victor's authoritarian motives in the first film, Marcus seeks to free his imprisoned brother William and reshape the world in the image of the original immortals. This raises the stakes, evolving the war from species-based politics to a mythological apocalypse. Act 2, the journey and revelation. Celine and Michael embark on a journey to uncover her forgotten past and stop Marcus. This part of the film is investigative and expository, filled with discoveries of hidden truths, including Celine's connection to the imprisonment of William and her father's role in building the prison that holds him. The film experiments here with flashback storytelling, not in a non-linear structure per se, but through Celine's resurfacing memories. These memories gradually reveal why Marcus needs her, and they become key turning points in understanding the grander plot. Meanwhile, Celine and Michael's romantic subplot begins to develop, offering moments of emotional vulnerability and contrast to the violent narrative. Marcus continues his pursuit, killing and consuming information through blood, which is a narrative device unique to the Underworld series, allowing vampires to access the memories of those they feed on. This keeps the plot moving rapidly and allows exposition without heavy dialogue. Act 3, the climax and resolution. The final act builds toward a mythic confrontation. Celine and Michael discover Alexander Corvinus, the immortal progenitor of both vampire and lichen species. He offers insight into their creation but refuses to stop Marcus himself, claiming neutrality. However, he gives Celine his blood, enhancing her powers beyond those of a normal vampire, setting her up for the final battle. Marcus finally locates and frees William, resulting in a chaotic climax where Celine and Michael must stop both monstrous brothers. This culminates in two major showdowns, Michael versus William and Celine versus Marcus. The battles are not just physical but symbolic, hybrids versus purebloods, free will versus ancestral legacy. Celine defeats Marcus in a visually striking and emotionally resonant scene, crushing him with a helicopter blade in a gory, stylized finale. William is also slain, and the ancient curse that birthed the lichens is extinguished. The ending hints that Celine has evolved into something entirely new, an immortal beyond vampire or lichen. Key themes and emotional impact. Legacy and bloodlines are central to the plot, as characters are constantly bound by the actions of their ancestors. The burden of immortality is explored through Alexander Corvinus, who chooses to remain detached rather than interfere in his son's chaos. Rebellion against destiny plays out in Celine's arc, as she refuses to be a pawn in the old vampire order and forges a new path. Emotionally, the film leans heavily into gothic tragedy and personal transformation, with Celine becoming a powerful and independent figure, both feared and admired. Michael's hybrid nature also represents the blending of two warring worlds, hinting at the possibility of peace through evolution rather than war. Conclusion. In terms of narrative, Underworld, Evolution is a highly stylized, lore-driven continuation of its predecessor. While it follows a linear plot, its frequent use of blood memory flashbacks and mythological exposition creates a rich, immersive backstory. The key turning points, Marcus's awakening, Celine's past, and the final confrontations, are executed with a mix of horror, action, and tragedy, making the film not just a sequel but a significant expansion of the Underworld universe. Celine, Kate Beckinsale. From death dealer to revolutionary. Celine, the central figure of the Underworld franchise, undergoes the most profound development in the film. Introduced in the first movie as a cold, disciplined death dealer, a vampire warrior trained to kill lichens without question, Celine begins this sequel as a fugitive. Her transformation continues as she breaks away from centuries of conditioning, becoming a free thinker and ultimately a revolutionary. Internal conflict and emotional growth. Celine's emotional landscape is far more complex in Evolution. Her stoic exterior begins to crack as she grows emotionally closer to Michael, the hybrid she once viewed as an enemy. Her sense of identity is shaken when she discovers that her entire worldview was manipulated by Victor, whom she once idolized. This betrayal becomes a key turning point, pushing her to seek the truth about her past and to question the rigid vampire hierarchy. Motivations. What drives Celine is no longer revenge or duty. It's truth, freedom, and protection of Michael. She is no longer a soldier obeying orders but a woman driven by her own moral compass. This marks a significant evolution in her character, as she shifts from a follower to a leader. Transformation. By the end of the film, Celine becomes physically and symbolically transformed after absorbing the blood of Alexander Corvinus. She is reborn as something greater, a vampire with enhanced powers who can walk in the daylight, defying the limitations of her species. This change is emblematic of her entire arc, a character who has transcended the old order to become something entirely new. Michael Corvin, Scott Speedman, the reluctant hybrid. Michael, the first true vampire-lichen hybrid, continues to serve as a bridge between the two warring species. His development in Evolution is more subtle but still essential to the story. Struggle for control. Michael spends much of the film struggling to control his hybrid nature, which represents the film's theme of duality and identity crisis. His inner turmoil is less about personality transformation and more about physical mastery and acceptance of what he's become. Relationship with Celine. His bond with Celine provides emotional grounding. Their relationship evolves from mutual protection to romantic intimacy, which softens both characters and humanizes the dark, violent world around them. Michael's love for Celine gives him a purpose, and his decision to fight alongside her becomes a declaration of self-determination. Arc contribution. Though he does not undergo radical psychological change, Michael's physical transformation and loyalty to Celine reinforce the film's larger message: unity, evolution, and breaking away from legacy-driven conflict. Marcus Corvinus, Tony Curran, the fallen elder. Marcus, the primary antagonist, is far more than a one-dimensional villain. He is a tragic figure, a once noble vampire elder corrupted by time, power, and the loss of his brother William. Motivations. Marcus's central goal is to free William and reunite with him. This makes his actions more personal than political. While his methods are brutal, his motivation stems from fraternal love and a warped sense of destiny, which brings a Shakespearean tragedy to his character. Symbol of the old world. Marcus embodies the tyranny of bloodlines and ancient order. His refusal to adapt or evolve positions him as the perfect ideological counterpoint to Celine and Michael. Where they represent change and progress, Marcus is obsessed with preserving the past, a path that leads to his downfall. Tragic end. Marcus's death is not just a physical defeat but a thematic closure of the old vampire regime. His character arc is not redemptive, but it is narratively important, serving as a cautionary tale of power unchecked by empathy or adaptation. Alexander Corvinus, Derek Jacobi, the immortal observer. Alexander Corvinus, the father of Marcus and William, is introduced as the first true immortal, a man who chose to remain neutral and unseen throughout centuries of bloodshed. Complexity of passivity. Alexander's refusal to intervene in the conflict between his sons or the vampire-lichen war presents a moral gray area. His passivity is presented as wisdom, but also as complicity. His decision to finally act by empowering Celine represents a turning point, a quiet recognition that neutrality has limits when destruction outweighs balance. Symbolism. He is a godlike figure, representing balance, origin, and divine disappointment. His death by Marcus's hand and his final gift to Celine signify the passing of the old to the new, a key moment in the film's theme of evolution. Conclusion. A character-driven Gothic evolution. In Underworld, evolution, character development is woven tightly into the film's dark, mythological world. Each major character, Celine, Michael, Marcus, and Alexander, represents different aspects of legacy, transformation, and resistance to destiny. Their interactions and personal journeys shape the film's emotional and thematic depth far more than the action sequences alone. Celine's evolution from obedient soldier to empowered leader drives the narrative emotionally, while Marcus's obsession with the past anchors the film's central conflict. Michael's role as the hybrid reflects the possibility of unity between enemies, and Alexander's final act passes the torch to a new generation. Together, these arcs create a layered and engaging character tapestry that elevates Underworld, evolution beyond typical action horror fare, transforming it into a Gothic epic of identity, love, and legacy. Kate Beckinsale as Celine, a career-defining role. Kate Beckinsale delivers a commanding and emotionally complex performance as Celine, the vampire death dealer who transitions from a loyal soldier to a free-willed heroine. Her portrayal remains the emotional and narrative centerpiece of the film. Physicality and poise. Beckinsale excels in the film's many action sequences, performing with a blend of balletic grace and ferocious intensity. Her fight scenes feel authentic, and her physical presence, clad in leather armor, wielding guns, and navigating dark, icy landscapes, becomes iconic. Emotional depth. Beneath the cold, assassin-like exterior, Beckinsale infuses Celine with emotional layers. She convincingly portrays the internal conflict of a woman torn between her loyalty to the vampire order and her personal awakening. Her scenes of grief, rage, and vulnerability, particularly those involving Michael or flashbacks of her family, humanize her character, giving the audience someone to root for. Transformation on screen. As Celine evolves, so does Beckinsale's performance. By the final act, she no longer portrays Celine as a weapon, but as a leader, composed, decisive, and emotionally driven. This subtle shift is managed with restraint and precision. Standout moment. The quiet scene where Celine confronts her past and realizes Victor betrayed her family is one of Beckinsale's most powerful moments. Her silent expressions speak volumes about heartbreak and awakening. Scott Speedman as Michael Corvin, the Quiet Core. Scott Speedman plays Michael Corvin, the first hybrid of vampire and lichen bloodlines. His performance, while more understated than Beckinsale's, provides a grounding presence in a world dominated by ancient bloodlines and mythical stakes. Subtle intensity. Michael is not a loud or dominant character, and Speedman smartly plays him with restraint. His performance suggests a man overwhelmed by transformation but slowly coming to terms with his power. This quiet strength complements Celine's more aggressive energy, making them an effective pair. Chemistry with Beckinsale. The chemistry between Speedman and Beckinsale is believable and sincere. Their connection isn't heavily romanticized but grows organically. Their shared moments bring warmth to an otherwise cold, violent world. Physical performance. While not as fluid a combatant as Celine, Speedman delivers believable fight sequences, particularly in his hybrid form. He captures the duality of his character, struggling between the beast and the man, with subtle physical cues and facial expression. Tony Curran as Marcus Corvinus, a menacing and tragic villain. Tony Curran's portrayal of Marcus, the film's central antagonist, is a standout performance. He balances menace, intelligence, and tragic intensity, crafting a character who is terrifying yet motivated by personal grief and misguided loyalty. Presence and voice. Curran's deep, raspy voice and commanding screen presence make Marcus instantly threatening. He doesn't rely on bombast. Rather, his calm, calculating demeanor enhances the fear factor. His scenes exude a quiet, ancient rage. Tragic undertones. Marcus is not a villain purely for evil's sake. Curran conveys a subtle sadness beneath Marcus's actions, a longing for his brother, William, and the frustration of being manipulated by the Vampire Council. This adds a layer of complexity to what could have been a one-dimensional monster. Physical transformation. As Marcus mutates into a monstrous, winged vampire, Curran retains control over the performance, blending the creature's brutality with human emotion. His body language and expressions remain readable and emotionally resonant even through heavy prosthetics and CGI. Derek Jacobi as Alexander Corvinus, gravitas and wisdom. Veteran actor Derek Jacobi lends gravitas to the role of Alexander Corvinus, the first immortal and father of Marcus and William. Though his screen time is limited, Jacobi's performance is layered with wisdom, restraint, and emotional weight. Understated strength. Jacobi plays Alexander as a weary godlike figure, burdened by the chaos his children unleashed. His calm delivery contrasts the urgency of the film's events, making him a symbol of time, fate, and moral detachment. Emotional anchor. His quiet scenes, particularly the one where he entrusts Celine with his blood, are among the film's most poignant. Jacobi makes Alexander a figure of solemn dignity, and his death scene resonates as a moment of irreversible change in the film's mythology. Supporting cast and minor roles. While the primary focus is on the leads and Marcus, the supporting cast provides adequate support. Brian Steele as William Corvinus, though non-verbal, gives a fully physical performance as the feral, uncontrollable first werewolf. He embodies raw animalistic rage and serves as a terrifying force of nature. The Vampire Council, soldiers, and scientists largely serve as narrative devices rather than characters, but their performances are serviceable and do not detract from the main plot. Conclusion: performances that ground the fantasy. In Underworld, Evolution, the performances successfully elevate a stylized, myth-heavy world into something emotionally compelling and believable. Kate Beckinsale delivers a career-defining turn as Celine, combining strength, vulnerability, and grace. Tony Curran's Marcus is a villain of mythic proportions brought to life through nuance and tragedy, while Scott Speedman and Derek Jacobi provide the emotional and philosophical counterweights to the film's action-heavy rhythm. Despite the genre's limitations in character realism, the cast's dedication allows Underworld, Evolution to resonate as not just a visual spectacle but a character-driven gothic saga. Tone and mood, gothic horror meets action fantasy. Len Wiseman masterfully maintains the brooding, gothic tone that defined the first film, while increasing the scale and intensity. From the very first frame, he establishes a world steeped in darkness, visually and thematically. The tone is unapologetically grim, cold, and violent, fitting for a story about immortals battling in the shadows of history. Use of environment. Remote icy forests, desolate ruins, candlelit catacombs, and gothic castles create a haunting atmosphere, reinforcing the film's sense of age-old conflict. The setting itself becomes an emotional landscape, cold, isolated, and brutal, reflecting the inner turmoil of the characters. Color palette and lighting. The film's blue-gray color grading, combined with low-key lighting and sharp shadows, contributes to the bleak, melancholic tone. Wiseman avoids warm colors almost entirely, signaling that Underworld operates in a realm where hope is scarce and danger is ever present. Narrative vision, expanding the mythology. One of Wiseman's strengths lies in his ability to expand the scope of the Underworld universe while maintaining narrative focus. In Evolution, he deepens the mythology by exploring the origins of vampires and lichens, introducing legendary figures like Marcus, William, and Alexander Corvinus. Rather than using exposition-heavy dialogue, Wiseman integrates flashbacks, blood memory sequences, and non-linear elements to gradually unravel key backstory details. Mythic storytelling. Wiseman directs the film like a dark fairy tale or a forgotten legend. By structuring the plot around ancient betrayals, bloodlines, and the sins of immortal forefathers, he adds emotional weight and historical resonance to what might otherwise be a straightforward action horror sequel. Themes of legacy and rebellion. Through his direction, Wiseman emphasizes themes of legacy, betrayal, and transformation. Celine's journey from loyal soldier to independent warrior is framed visually and narratively as a rebellion against centuries of oppression, a reflection of the director's interest in free will and moral evolution. Stylistic choices, visual signature and cinematic flair. Wiseman's background in visual design and action choreography is evident throughout the film. His signature slick, stylized direction includes dynamic camera work. The camera glides through ancient hallways, follows high-speed chases, and captures aerial battles between flying immortals. Wiseman uses tracking shots, sweeping overhead views, and tight close-ups to immerse viewers in both the action and the emotional moments. Slow motion and time manipulation. He frequently uses slow motion to accentuate key action beats, bullets tearing through the air, vampires leaping across rooftops, or Celine drawing her weapons. These moments are not just for spectacle. They reinforce the heightened perception and agility of these supernatural beings. Creature design and visual effects integration. Wiseman ensures that the creature effects, particularly Marcus's monstrous form and William's werewolf appearance, are seamlessly integrated into the physical environments. He balances practical effects with CGI in a way that maintains immersion without overwhelming the viewer. Pacing, controlled and purposeful. The pacing of Underworld, Evolution reflects Wiseman's careful balancing act between action, lore, and character development. The film rarely lingers, moving quickly from one location to another, keeping tension high and momentum steady. Action versus exposition balance. Wiseman structures the film so that every major action scene is followed by an emotional or narrative revelation. This ebb and flow prevents viewer fatigue and allows the audience to absorb the mythology without being overwhelmed. No wasted scenes. Every sequence, even those heavy with lore or backstory, serves a purpose, either advancing character arcs or enriching the universe. Wiseman avoids filler content, making the 106-minute runtime feel efficient and tightly packed. Character direction, guiding performances with purpose. Wiseman's directorial guidance ensures that performances don't get lost in the film's visual ambition. He draws emotionally grounded portrayals from his cast, particularly Kate Beckinsale, who brings internal conflict and steely resolve to Celine. Tony Curran, whose Marcus is monstrous yet sympathetic in motive. Scott Speedman, who plays Michael as a calm, grounded center amidst the chaos. Wiseman's approach is to allow the characters to emote through action and subtle expression rather than heavy dialogue. He trusts his actors to communicate through physical presence and restraint, a choice that fits the moody, mythic tone of the film. Conclusion, a cohesive vision of darkness and destiny. In Underworld, Evolution, Len Wiseman proves himself not just as a stylistic director, but as a mythmaker. His direction is deliberate and visionary, merging gothic horror, ancient legend, and modern action with visual elegance. Every element, from pacing and shot composition to mood and performance, is orchestrated to serve the film's central themes of transformation, legacy, and rebellion. By staying true to the Underworld aesthetic while broadening its narrative scope, Wiseman cements Evolution as not just a worthy sequel, but a richer and more ambitious cinematic chapter in the franchise. Lighting, shadows, contrast, and the language of darkness. The lighting in Underworld, Evolution is deliberately low-key, emphasizing shadows, silhouettes, and cool-toned palettes. This technique supports the film's gothic horror tone and aligns with its themes of secrecy, betrayal, and the eternal war between hidden creatures. Blue-gray color grading. A signature feature of the film's cinematography is its monochromatic blue-gray grading, which bathes nearly every scene in cold, muted hues. This not only reflects the emotional detachment of its immortal characters, but also suggests a world perpetually void of sunlight, fitting for a vampire-driven narrative. Backlighting and silhouettes. Characters are often framed with backlighting that creates strong silhouettes, Celine emerging from shadows, Marcus descending from the sky with backlit wings. These moments add a mythical, almost religious aura to the characters, heightening their larger-than-life presence. Contrast and isolation. The interplay between light and dark is used to isolate characters within their surroundings. Celine often appears alone, bathed in light while the world around her remains in darkness, a visual metaphor for her growing separation from the old vampire order. Camera angles and movement, kinetic action and epic scale. The camera work in Underworld, Evolution is fluid, purposeful, and designed to immerse the viewer in both intimate emotional beats and large-scale mythic action. Simon Duggan and Len Wiseman collaborate to create a visual style that feels both visceral and operatic. Tracking and crane shots. Many action sequences, such as Celine's fights or Marcus's aerial attacks, are captured using wide-angle tracking shots and cranes, giving the viewer a full view of the choreography. This method helps maintain spatial clarity and makes the action feel grand and cinematic. Handheld and tight close-ups. In emotionally charged or suspenseful moments, the cinematography shifts to more handheld shots or extreme close-ups. Celine's eyes, Michael's transformation, and Marcus's subtle expressions are all emphasized through framing that pulls the viewer into the psychological state of the characters. Aerial and bird's-eye perspectives. In scenes involving Marcus flying or large architectural locations, such as the Vampire Coven or Alexander Corvinus's ship, aerial perspectives are employed to emphasize scale, isolation, or verticality, reinforcing the supernatural and often surreal tone of the film. Framing and composition, visual metaphors and character emotion. Duggan's composition choices are rich with symbolism and thematic subtext, particularly in how characters are placed in the frame relative to each other and their environments. Symmetrical composition. Many scenes are shot with symmetry, especially when depicting ancient settings like tombs, corridors, or council chambers. This visual balance conveys the rigid, hierarchical structures of the vampire world, structures that Celine seeks to dismantle. Foreground-background dynamics. Duggan often places action in the foreground, while placing crumbling structures, misty mountains, or firelit ruins in the background. This layering technique serves to highlight how personal struggles occur against the backdrop of ancient history and supernatural lore. Isolation through negative space. When Celine confronts her trauma or Michael faces transformation, characters are framed alone in large, empty spaces. This use of negative space emphasizes their isolation and the weight of their destinies. Visually striking moments. Several scenes in Underworld, Evolution stand out for their cinematographic brilliance. Celine's leap into the ice lake. A slow-motion descent as Celine dives through ice, beautifully captured with a mix of top-down and underwater angles, combining elegance and desperation. Marcus's transformation scene. Lit with fire and shadow, the moment Marcus mutates into his grotesque winged form is terrifying and mesmerizing. The use of flickering light reflects the inner chaos of the character. Final battle in the ruins. The final confrontation between Celine, Michael, Marcus, and William is drenched in moonlight and fire. Wide shots emphasize the decay of the ancient prison, while close-ups capture the intensity of each blow. This sequence blends mythic scale with emotional resolution, a hallmark of Duggan's style. Atmosphere, tension, and beauty. Atmosphere. The cinematography plays a central role in establishing Underworld's atmosphere, a world where time has stopped, where creatures lurk behind every shadow, and where the line between beauty and horror is thin. The use of fog, snow, rain, and fire as environmental effects deepens this immersive quality. Tension. Tension is built through lingering shots, low angles, and occluded visuals, characters seen through doorways, mirrors, or partially obscured by shadows. These choices hint at danger and secrets without showing them outright. Beauty. Even amid violence and horror, Duggan finds visual beauty in Celine's movement, the architecture of vampire sanctuaries, and the haunting stillness of the night. The cinematography romanticizes the darkness without glamorizing it. Conclusion. A visually poetic Gothic tale. In Underworld, Evolution, Simon Duggan's cinematography is far more than functional. It is poetic, immersive, and emotionally expressive. Through moody lighting, fluid camera movement, and carefully crafted compositions, the visuals elevate the film's storytelling, infusing every frame with meaning, mythology, and mood. His work transforms a genre film into a visually rich Gothic experience, ensuring that Underworld, Evolution remains not just a sequel, but a cinematic statement of atmosphere, transformation, and timeless conflict. Underworld, Evolution, 2006. Cinematography, expanded analysis. Cinematographer, Simon Duggan. Director, Len Wiseman. Movie Camera 1. Visual identity, crafting a Gothic, mythological world. The world of Underworld, Evolution is steeped in a specific, unmistakable aesthetic. Cinematographer Simon Duggan works hand-in-hand with Len Wiseman to create a visually cohesive world, merging Gothic fantasy with action horror. The visual language isn't incidental. It is deeply intentional, echoing the film's themes of secrecy, duality, eternal conflict, and tragic immortality. The film's visual DNA is forged through a cool, desaturated palette, heavy use of monochromatic tones, blues, silvers, blacks, and sharp contrasts between light and shadow. This isn't just a stylistic preference. It evokes the eternal night in which vampires dwell, both physically and emotionally. Duggan carefully avoids bright or natural light, with only a few exceptions, reinforcing the idea that these characters exist outside the realm of ordinary life. Even when scenes take place during the day, such as on Alexander Corvinus's ship, the lighting is filtered and shadowed. Torch 2. Lighting. Symbolism in shadow and illumination. The use of lighting is not simply atmospheric. It carries thematic weight. Low-key lighting. Most of the film is lit with minimal sources, relying on candlelight, firelight, or dim artificial sources. This keeps the film bathed in perpetual twilight, evoking mystery, secrecy, and decay. It visually reinforces the character's detachment from the living world. Motivated lighting. Duggan frequently uses naturalistic sources within the scene, e.g., torches, fire, moonlight, to justify the illumination. This increases realism within a fantasy context and grounds the supernatural in the physical world. Character symbolism through light. Our Celine is often lit from above or the side, casting half her face in shadow. This mirrors her internal conflict, loyalty versus rebellion, human versus monster. A Marcus, by contrast, is often backlit, especially in his winged form. The use of fiery or golden light behind him evokes a fallen angel, reinforcing his identity as a corrupted elder seeking godlike dominance. Framed picture #3. Framing and composition. Visual metaphors in every shot. Every frame of Underworld. Evolution is composed to reflect not only narrative function but emotional state and power dynamics. Power and hierarchy in composition. Are in scenes with vampire elders or council meetings, Duggan frequently uses low-angle shots to elevate their authority and dominance. Our Celine, as she rebels and grows in power, shifts from being shot at eye level or below to being shot from slightly above, suggesting her ascent to a position of spiritual and narrative power. Symmetry and decay. Gothic architecture and ancient settings are often shot with perfect symmetry, suggesting order, tradition, and rigidity. These visuals are later juxtaposed with chaotic fight scenes and destruction, a visual representation of tradition crumbling under the weight of rebellion and truth. Negative space as isolation. Characters like Celine and Michael are often framed alone against large, empty backdrops, snowy forests, cavernous ruins, icy landscapes. This framing device communicates their emotional isolation and the loneliness of their transformation. Pedestrian 4. Camera movement, enhancing action and emotion. Simon Duggan's camera is rarely static, yet it's never chaotic or disorienting. Movement is used to guide emotional focus, create momentum, or establish grandeur. Tracking shots in action. Duggan often follows characters through tight corridors, snowy terrain, or mid-air battles using smooth tracking or crane shots. These allow the audience to stay connected to the geography of the scene, a rarity in modern action cinema. Slow motion and suspended time. A key visual element of the Underworld series is its use of slow-motion combat, bullets spinning through the air, Celine diving or spinning mid-air, Marcus's wings unfurling. These moments do more than stylize action. They reflect the heightened perception of immortal beings and give their movements a mythic, balletic quality. Vertical movement and aerial perspectives. Marcus's flight is captured through a mixture of POV shots, bird's-eye views, and low-angle tilts, emphasizing his dominance over the land and his unnatural, godlike status. 5. Environmental cinematography, locations as emotional landscapes. The locations and how they are shot carry deep narrative meaning. Snowy forests and ice caves. These are not just settings, they reflect emotional and thematic motifs, isolation, purity, danger, memory. Celine's dive beneath the ice into a submerged memory, literally and metaphorically, is one of the film's most symbolic visuals. Alexander Corvinus's ship. The interior is dimly lit, metallic, and labyrinthine, symbolizing the character's detachment and neutrality. The cool lighting reflects his moral distance from his son's actions. Ancient ruins and tombs. Shot with reverence and grandeur, these spaces often dwarf the characters within them, visually communicating the burden of history and legacy. Clapperboard 6. Cinematography enhancing storytelling moments. Let's explore specific scenes where cinematography enhances narrative beats. White heavy checkmark Celine's transformation scene, final act. As she drinks Alexander's blood, the lighting gradually shifts, from cold and muted to bright, radiant light that bathes her face. It's one of the only moments where warm light is used, symbolizing rebirth. The camera slowly zooms in on her eyes as they change. The entire transformation is told visually, without exposition. White heavy checkmark Celine and Michael's intimate moment. Amid the violence, a brief moment of peace between Celine and Michael is shot in soft focus, with warm candlelight, visually distinct from the cold, blue world. This contrast emphasizes the rarity of love in their cursed lives. White heavy checkmark Marcus versus Celine final battle. Duggan shifts between wide landscape shots and tight close-ups, creating scale while maintaining emotional tension. Sparks, firelight, and ancient stone all play into a visual metaphor, a clash of old gods at the end of time. Symbolism in visual storytelling. The cinematography in Underworld, Evolution is rich with visual allegory. Ice and water. Memories are buried under ice, Celine's past, and water is used to signal emotional clarity, rebirth, or loss. Light as truth. Whenever a character approaches the truth about bloodlines, betrayal, or destiny, the lighting subtly shifts toward brightness. Architecture as oppression. The rigid, geometric layouts of vampire covens reflect the confining nature of ancient orders and outdated power structures. White heavy checkmark conclusion. a visual symphony of shadows, myth, and emotion. Simon Duggan's cinematography in Underworld. Evolution is more than just visual flair. It is a deeply integrated part of the film's storytelling architecture. Through meticulous lighting, symbolic composition, and kinetic movement, the cinematography builds a world where beauty and terror coexist. It draws the viewer into a place where myth bleeds into reality and where every shadow hides meaning. The result is a film that feels like a Gothic painting in motion, a cinematic world so visually consistent and emotionally expressive that the audience doesn't just watch it, they inhabit it. Underworld, Evolution, 2006. Editing and Pacing, In-Depth Analysis. Edited by Nicholas de Toth. Director, Len Wiseman. Black Scissors #1. Overview of editing style, momentum through precision. Underworld, Evolution is a film that thrives on momentum. Under the editing supervision of Nicholas de Toth, the movie maintains a strong forward drive, aiming to balance high-stakes action, mythology-heavy exposition, and intimate character development within its 106-minute runtime. The editing supports this ambition with a style that is tight, kinetic, and often deliberately breathless. Rather than lingering on moments, the film favors fluid transitions and fast cuts, prioritizing pacing that mimics the urgency of the narrative. This decision keeps the audience constantly on edge, reflecting the ever-escalating stakes faced by the characters. Stopwatch #2. Pacing breakdown, act-by-act rhythm. White heavy checkmark opening act, prologue plus initial chase. The film begins with a flashback prologue, introducing the ancient conflict and the origins of the immortal bloodlines. The editing here is measured and rhythmic, allowing the audience to absorb the mythological setup without becoming overwhelmed. However, once the narrative jumps to the present, the pacing accelerates rapidly. The first 20 minutes are tightly cut. The vampire death dealers are being hunted, Celine and Michael are on the run, and Marcus awakens. Transitions between scenes are quick, using crosscuts and hard cuts to maintain tension. The editing creates a sense of danger being just seconds away. White heavy checkmark middle act, revelations and world building. This is where the film juggles exposition-heavy scenes with continued action. Sequences involving Alexander Corvinus and the explanation of the hybrid bloodlines risk slowing the film down, but the editing cleverly interweaves these dialogues with flashbacks or visually dynamic moments, such as Celine's visions. Transitions between memory and present are often seamless, relying on match cuts, dissolves, and sound bridges to avoid jarring shifts in tone. This keeps viewer engagement intact while delivering dense lore. White heavy checkmark final act, climactic battle and resolution. The editing reaches its most aggressive and intense phase during the final act. Fight sequences are fast-paced but maintain spatial clarity. Viewers can track who is doing what, where. Quick cuts are used to emphasize supernatural speed and power, but reaction shots and wide establishing shots provide context between moments of chaos. Importantly, the climax doesn't overstay its welcome. After the emotional and physical peak, the film moves swiftly to its resolution, maintaining emotional momentum without unnecessary denouement. Clapperboard 3. Action editing, balancing clarity and chaos. Given the film's reliance on action horror sequences, the editing is especially crucial in determining whether the action feels impactful or confusing. Quick cuts and kinetic energy. Fight scenes, such as Celine versus Marcus or the chase in the forest, use short-duration cuts, 1 to 2 seconds per shot, enhancing the feeling of speed and danger. This rapid editing mirrors the hyperphysical nature of vampire and lichen combat. Maintaining continuity. Despite quick cuts, editor de Toth employs classic techniques to preserve geographic clarity, including consistent screen direction, anchor shots, and logical eye lines. This avoids the shaky cam confusion seen in other mid-2000s action films. Rhythmic editing in combat. Scenes are often cut to match musical cues or sound design, allowing battles to feel almost like violent choreography. This rhythmic cutting gives even chaotic moments a musical quality. Tension builds, climaxes, and releases in waves. Hourglass with flowing sand 4. Emotional beats and temporal manipulation. Editing also plays a key role in shaping emotional resonance and guiding the viewer's perception of time. Slow motion for emotional emphasis. Time is slowed down strategically, not just for stylistic flair, but to highlight emotional pivots. When Celine leaps to protect Michael or drinks Corvinus's blood, the slow motion extends emotional moments, giving viewers time to process transformation or sacrifice. Cross-cutting for thematic parallelism. At several points, scenes involving different characters, e.g., Celine discovering truth versus Marcus committing violence, are intercut. This builds dramatic irony and allows thematic parallels, such as power, loss, or betrayal, to be drawn visually. Dream and memory sequences. Editing helps distinguish flashbacks and visions through soft transitions, desaturated grading, and slow dissolves, creating a dreamlike flow. These sequences are always coherently integrated into the story, ensuring emotional immersion isn't broken. Scales #5. Potential critiques, moments of rushed development. While Underworld, evolution is mostly well-paced, a few moments do feel compressed, likely due to runtime constraints. Michael's transformation and role. His arc sometimes feels hurried. There is little time spent on his internal conflict or adjustment to hybrid powers, which could have benefited from slightly slower pacing or more reflective editing. Corvinus's sacrifice. Though narratively important, Alexander Corvinus's death happens so quickly it lacks full emotional weight. A more extended sequence with additional reaction shots might have deepened the impact. Film #6. Overall narrative flow, fluid and propulsive. The film's editing ultimately ensures that the narrative never stalls. Even when dealing with complex world-building, the editor ensures momentum is preserved. The action scenes are exhilarating, the emotional beats land effectively, and transitions are slick and coherent. The pacing supports the film's tone, brooding, intense, and tragic. It mirrors Celine's journey, always moving forward, even when burdened by the past. Whiteheavy checkmark conclusion, a well-cut balance of action and lore. Underworld, evolution excels in the editing department by maintaining a tight, relentless rhythm while managing a rich mythology and emotional stakes. Editor Nicholas de Toth balances speed with clarity and style with substance. While some moments feel slightly rushed, the film's overall tempo keeps viewers invested from start to finish, delivering a thrilling, cinematic experience that respects both spectacle and story. Underworld, Evolution, 2006. Soundtrack and score, in-depth analysis. Composer, Marco Beltrami. Soundtrack producer, Danny Lona. Featured artists, Pussifer, Tool, My Chemical Romance, Atreyu, Chester Bennington, and more. Musical score 1. Role of music in the film's world, gothic, dark, and urgent. In Underworld, Evolution, the music plays a vital atmospheric role, weaving together the film's gothic horror aesthetic, high-octane action, and tragic emotional undertones. Composer Marco Beltrami crafts a score that reinforces the movie's identity, one that exists in a world of eternal darkness, supernatural legacy, and emotional conflict. Beltrami, known for his work in horror and action films, Scream, 3:10 to Yuma, brings a restrained yet powerful orchestral palette, blending it with modern electronic elements. His score does not compete with the visuals but elevates them, acting as an emotional undercurrent that enhances both spectacle and subtlety. Violin 2. The score, haunting minimalism meets action rhythms. Marco Beltrami's score avoids the bombastic tropes of traditional action films. Instead, it leans into a haunting minimalism, sustained strings, low brass, eerie piano, and electronic textures that match the cold, nocturnal visual tone of the film. Musical note: key musical characteristics. Low, droning cello and brass themes to represent Marcus and the ancient bloodline. Soft piano melodies to underscore Celine's emotional vulnerability. Percussive, industrial motifs during chase and combat scenes. Silence or near silence used masterfully to build tension in dialogue-heavy or stalking sequences. This musical approach supports the gothic noir atmosphere and reflects the film's themes of destiny, memory, and identity. #3. Character themes and emotional undercurrents. While Underworld, Evolution doesn't use traditional leitmotifs as in classic scores, it builds emotional consistency through tone and instrumentation tied to character emotion. Celine's emotional journey. The music softens around Celine, particularly in scenes with Michael. Sparse piano, light strings, and ambient textures represent her internal conflict and gradual opening of her humanity. Marcus's presence. Whenever Marcus appears, the score shifts to ominous low-frequency tones. His presence is often accompanied by deep, vibrating strings and synthetic undertones, reflecting his monstrous transformation and corrupt power. Michael's hybrid identity. Though Michael's theme is less defined, the score around him blends human and non-human elements, strings clashing with distorted electronic sounds, subtly reinforcing his hybrid nature. Explosion symbol 4. Action scoring, rhythmic and kinetic, but never distracting. In contrast to the moody, atmospheric scoring of dialogue or exposition scenes, the action sequences are scored with urgency and pulse. Beltrami uses rapid string ostinatos, synchronized percussion, distorted electronic rhythms. This creates a feeling of propulsion during chase scenes, battles, or escapes, such as Celine's confrontation with Marcus or the forest pursuit. Crucially, the action score never overwhelms. It works in synergy with the sound design and editing to maintain clarity and immersion. 5. The power of silence and sonic restraint. One of the more artful choices in the film's soundscape is its use of silence or ambient near silence. In horror and suspenseful scenes, Beltrami often pulls back, allowing environmental sounds, footsteps, breathing, or wind, to dominate. This creates heightened tension, moments of reflection, more dramatic contrast when music returns. For instance, during Celine's quiet moments of grief or moral uncertainty, the absence of music is as powerful as any score, allowing the audience to sink into her emotional state without auditory manipulation. Licensed soundtrack, Gothic rock meets industrial edge. Beyond Beltrami's original score, the film includes tracks curated and produced by Danny Lona, former Nine Inch Nails member, adding a modern, Gothic industrial rock flavor to the world. Musical note: notable artists and tracks. Pussifer, Maynard James Keenan of Tool, brings eerie, atmospheric vocals. My Chemical Romance channels emotional, youthful aggression that complements Celine and Michael's struggle. Atreyu, Chester Bennington, Slipknot's members, offer heavier tones during the credits and high-energy scenes. These tracks are used mostly in end credits or trailers, not overwhelming the film itself, but giving it a distinct musical identity in promotional material and sound marketing. Chart with upward trend 7. Integration with the story, seamless and thematically focused. The most effective aspect of the Underworld Evolution score is that it feels invisible when needed and emotionally commanding when necessary. The music never forces feeling upon the viewer. Instead, it enhances what's already there, deepening romantic longing, sorrow, horror, or suspense. Its tonal consistency, dark, cold, and elegant, reflects the visual world of ancient vampires, decaying castles, and forbidden bloodlines. White have a checkmark conclusion, an atmospheric soundscape that complements the darkness. The score and soundtrack of Underworld Evolution succeed not by being flashy or melodically dominant, but by immersing viewers in its haunting Gothic world. Marco Beltrami's restrained orchestration, layered with subtle electronics and effective silence, builds a soundscape that supports every moment, from the action-packed to the intimate. Alongside a carefully curated licensed soundtrack, the film crafts a musical identity that is as dark, tragic, and mysterious as the immortals it portrays. It's a score that doesn't demand attention, but rewards those who listen closely. Underworld Evolution 2006 Themes and Messages. Exploring immortality, legacy, identity, and the burden of the past. 1. The burden of immortality and eternal conflict. One of the film's most dominant themes is the psychological and moral toll of immortality. As vampires and lichens engage in endless war, Underworld Evolution shows how living for centuries comes not with wisdom, but with regret, corruption, and decay. Characters like Marcus and Victor are ancient beings driven not by noble goals, but by self-preservation and power, suggesting that immortality distorts morality. Even Celine, who begins as a loyal death dealer, slowly recognizes that eternity without purpose becomes a curse. Small Blue Diamond Effectiveness. The film subtly but powerfully presents the idea that living forever doesn't mean evolving emotionally. In many cases, it leads to moral stagnation. 2. Bloodlines, legacy, and the cycles of vengeance. A major narrative and thematic engine of the film is bloodline conflict, literal and symbolic. The ancient rivalry between Marcus and his brother William reflects a cycle of familial betrayal and violent legacy, echoing biblical themes of Cain and Abel. Celine's transformation, gaining powers through Alexander Corvinus's blood, represents a break in the old chain of control, signaling evolution not just physically but ideologically. The theme suggests that true evolution comes not from power, but from rejecting inherited hatred and forging a new path. Small Blue Diamond Effectiveness. This message is woven directly into the plot and character arcs, particularly Celine's rise as a new kind of leader. It's a clear, allegorical take on breaking generational trauma. Candle 3. Identity, choice, and free will. Celine's arc revolves around her shifting identity, from a vampire enforcer indoctrinated by lies to a self-aware warrior questioning her place in a broken system. Her emotional bond with Michael, a hybrid who represents unity between vampire and lichen, pushes her to question the moral framework she once followed blindly. Michael's struggle also reflects the conflict of identity and acceptance, as he is hunted by both sides. The film asks, can one choose who they are, or are we doomed to follow blood and tradition? Small blue diamond effectiveness. The film doesn't overstate this theme, but it's visible in the emotional beats and character decisions, especially in the quieter moments between Celine and Michael. #4. Power, control, and the corruption of institutions. Through characters like Victor and Marcus, Underworld, Evolution critiques authoritarian power structures, those who rewrite history to maintain control. Victor's manipulation of Celine's past and Marcus's thirst for unchallenged rule reflect how ancient power resists change and evolution. This mirrors real-world systems where truth is often hidden or distorted to justify dominance, and where revolution is required for truth to surface. Small blue diamond effectiveness. Though masked by fantasy, this political undercurrent adds intellectual weight to what might otherwise seem like simple action horror. Red Heart #5. Forbidden love as a catalyst for change. The love story between Celine and Michael isn't just romantic filler. It serves as a thematic device to bridge warring species and challenge the idea of purity and tribal loyalty. Their relationship is a rebellion against centuries of segregation and violence. In embracing Michael, Celine rejects her vampire indoctrination and embraces a future built on connection rather than conflict. Small blue diamond effectiveness. Their bond is understated but emotionally resonant. It doesn't dominate the story but acts as a symbol of unity and progress. 6. Science versus mythology. Genetic truths in a supernatural world. Though steeped in myth and legend, the Underworld franchise often explores scientific rationalization of supernatural beings. The idea that vampirism and lycanthropy stem from a virus linked to genetic mutation brings a layer of sci-fi realism to the Gothic world. This creates tension between ancient beliefs and modern knowledge, encouraging the viewer to question the origins of myth and how truth evolves with time. Small blue diamond effectiveness. This theme adds a unique flavor to the genre and sets Underworld apart from traditional vampire films. It's more thought-provoking than immediately emotional but enriches the lore. Bullseye conclusion. Deep themes beneath stylish action. Underworld, Evolution, 2006, may appear at first glance to be a fast-paced action horror film filled with supernatural battles and gothic visuals, but beneath its stylistic surface lies a thoughtful exploration of the emptiness of eternal life, the dangers of inherited conflict, the search for identity in a world of control, the hope found in love, unity, and breaking tradition. Through Celine and Michael's journey, the film communicates that true evolution isn't in blood or power, but in emotional growth and moral awakening. While some viewers may be more drawn to its action and aesthetics, the film's themes are embedded well enough to leave a lasting impression on those who look deeper. Underworld, Evolution, 2006, Visual Effects and CGI. A seamless fusion of practical craftsmanship and early 2000s CGI innovation. Milky Way, a dark, stylized world enhanced by CGI. From the very beginning, Underworld, Evolution immerses its audience in a richly stylized Gothic world, drenched in shadow, moonlight, and a cold blue-gray color palette. The visual effects, VFX, play a central role in maintaining the franchise's unique aesthetic, darkly mythological yet grounded in a pseudo-realistic tone. The CGI in the film blends surprisingly well with the production design and overall mood, especially considering the film's 2006 release date, an era when digital effects were still maturing. The visual style was carefully crafted to ensure that CGI elements didn't feel jarringly artificial, which is a common pitfall in many mid-2000s action fantasy films. Wolf face creature design, lichens, hybrids, and transformations. One of the standout uses of visual effects is the werewolf, lichen, transformations, which rely on a combination of practical makeup effects and digital morphing sequences. The transformation scenes of Michael into a hybrid are detailed and visceral, featuring expanding muscle structures, elongating limbs, and skin tearing, a painful metamorphosis that evokes sympathy and horror. These effects are partially practical, utilizing prosthetics and makeup to establish a base, and then augmented with CGI to capture fluid motion and anatomical change. The result is a transformation that feels both believable and horrifying, a hallmark of great creature-based visual effects. #flight sequences and supernatural powers. Marcus, the vampire-turned-ancient monster with bat-like wings, is one of the film's most complex VFX-heavy characters. His flight scenes, mid-air battles, and violent attacks involve intricate digital rigging and compositing. His winged form is fully computer-generated in many scenes but designed with textures and movement that mimic practical weight and muscle tension. The action choreography involving Marcus often places him against real actors. Yet the transitions between live-action stunts and CGI augmentation are smooth, particularly during the final battle. Rather than merely showing off special effects, Marcus's powers are used to amplify the menace of his character, supporting the narrative rather than distracting from it. Gore, blood, and violent impacts. The film contains plenty of stylized violence, including beheadings, impalements, and explosive deaths, many of which are executed through a combination of digital blood splatter and practical squibs or prosthetics. The digital blood effects can, at times, look slightly exaggerated or glossy, a minor distraction especially in slower shots. However, in fast-paced sequences, the CGI gore blends efficiently with camera motion and sound design, enhancing the chaotic nature of battle without pulling viewers out of the scene. Practical effects versus CGI, a balanced blend. One of Underworld, Evolution's greatest strengths lies in its balanced integration of practical and digital effects. Director Len Wiseman and the production team did not over-rely on CGI, choosing instead to ground their visuals in tangible set designs, creature suits, and in-camera effects wherever possible. Lycans and vampire elders have real textures and presence, which makes their enhanced forms via CGI more impactful and less uncanny. The interior sets, such as ancient crypts, gothic halls, and icy caverns, are practically built, while the background extensions and environmental effects are subtly enhanced through digital means. This thoughtful layering makes the supernatural world of Underworld, Evolution feel lived in and not overly synthetic, a crucial element for audience immersion. Fire set piece highlights. Several major action sequences showcase the technical prowess of the film's VFX team. The helicopter scene. Celine's assault on Marcus in midair is a complex combination of green screen work, miniature models, and CGI enhancements, resulting in a chaotic and thrilling moment. Final battle in the fortress. This climax features extensive digital compositing, fire effects, structural collapses, and creature combat, all rendered with clarity and impact. Marcus's awakening. His resurrection from the tomb involves digital wing growth, blood reconstruction, and high-detail close-ups, a visual highlight that conveys power and horror simultaneously. Bullseye conclusion, a visually cohesive experience. Underworld, Evolution, 2006, is a visual effects success by mid-2000s standards and remains impressive today due to its restraint and stylistic consistency. The film never lets its CGI overshadow its storytelling, and instead uses it to deepen world building, enhance character design, support visceral, fast-paced action, maintain the gothic, shadowy tone that defines the franchise. In summary, the film's blend of digital innovation and practical artistry ensures that the supernatural feels tangible, terrifying, and engaging, a key reason why Underworld, Evolution continues to be regarded as a strong entry in the action horror genre. Underworld, Evolution, 2006, a visual effects and CGI, expanded analysis. New Moon symbol the VFX vision, expanding a mythical gothic world. At its core, Underworld, Evolution is a visually driven film that merges gothic horror, sleek sci-fi action, and dark mythology. The visual effects team, led by visual effects supervisor Kevin Rafferty, had the enormous task of expanding the world building of the first film while enhancing the creatures, environments, and action to match a more ambitious story. The VFX work supports this by creating ancient landscapes, supernatural transformations, high-octane battles, and hyper-stylized horror moments, all while keeping the audience immersed in the mythos of vampires and lycans. Creature design, elevating horror with digital anatomy. Marcus Corvinus, the hybrid vampire elder. One of the most technically impressive visual creations in the film is Marcus, portrayed by Tony Curran. His mutated form, with bat-like wings, talon claws, and grotesquely veined skin, is the result of both practical prosthetics and 3D modeling. His wings are fully CG-generated, but the textures are based on real bat anatomy, making them look leathery and natural. When Marcus flies or swoops into action, physics-based animation was used to simulate muscle tension and wing flapping realistically, giving weight to his movements. VFX artists used motion capture reference to blend human acting with the unnatural features of his transformation. Michael Corvin, the Lycan vampire hybrid. Michael's transformation into a hybrid creature features one of the film's most ambitious uses of digital effects. Artists designed a muscular, vein-covered body with piercing blue eyes, sharp claws, and semi-transparent skin textures that reflect both lichen and vampire DNA. His transformation sequences are brutal and anatomical. Limbs stretch, skin splits, and the body convulses, rendered with progressive morphing algorithms that were cutting-edge in 2006. Michael's dual nature is visualized not just through creature design, but through lighting choices and particle effects that make his energy aura shift subtly between vampire blue and lichen gray. #transformation sequences, blending gore and technology. Transformation sequences, from human to werewolf or hybrid, are thematic centerpieces of the Underworld films, and Evolution elevates them with painstaking attention to biological realism. Instead of quick cuts or smoke clouds, each transformation unfolds organically, allowing the audience to see bones stretch, spines elongate, and muscles rip through clothing. These sequences used a hybrid approach, physical makeup applied on set followed by CG overlays that finish the metamorphosis with smooth digital transitions. This technique helps ground the effects in reality, making them feel tactile and not cartoonish, crucial for maintaining the film's grounded horror tone. European castle environments and background extensions. While many sets were practically built, such as the vampire sanctuaries, ice caverns, and Marcus's ancient prison, they were digitally extended to make them feel larger and more otherworldly. The ancient fortress during the climax was a mix of partial physical set and CGI architecture, digitally enhanced to appear vast and monolithic. Matte paintings and 3D matte extensions helped build expansive snowy forests and ancient battlegrounds, especially in flashback sequences. In these moments, the CG never dominates the frame but acts as a complement to physical geography, giving the illusion of scale without sacrificing realism. Fire action sequences, CG integration in fast-paced combat. The film features several action-heavy sequences that required seamless integration of CG characters, stunt doubles, props, and digital destruction. Helicopter sequence. As Marcus attacks a helicopter mid-flight, the combination of green screen, wire stunts, and digital doubles allows for inhuman physics without appearing absurd. Real wind machines and physical props were used to simulate chaos inside the helicopter, with CGI used to remove wires and enhance destruction. Final battle. In the climax between Celine, Michael, and Marcus, digital blood, wing damage, shattering ice, and exploding organs are all part of the intense choreography. CG particles were used for blood mist, flying debris, and magical energy, enhancing the violence in a stylized, comic book fashion. Syringe use of digital gore and supernatural effects. Blood, gore, and violence are not just for shock in Underworld, Evolution. They are aesthetic components of its stylized vampire universe. The digital blood spurts are exaggerated but stylized, often shown in slow motion or accompanied by atmospheric lighting to give them a surreal look. Supernatural elements like immortal regeneration, energy pulses, and vampire memory sharing are rendered using ethereal VFX techniques like particle flows, lens flares, and holographic overlays. Artist palette color grading and visual cohesion. The film uses a heavy blue and gray color grade, both in practical lighting and post-production. This wasn't just an artistic choice but a VFX strategy to hide digital seams in CGI models and compositing. Maintain mood consistency between real sets and digitally enhanced locations. Evoke a cold, gothic aesthetic consistent with vampire lore. This color approach gives the film a graphic novel-like quality, with each frame resembling a panel from a dark comic book. Scales #balance of practical and digital effects, the franchise's signature. One of the most praised aspects of Underworld, Evolution, is its blending of practical creature suits, animatronics, prosthetics, and makeup with modern VFX. Practical effects were often used for close-ups and dialogue scenes, e.g., Marcus's mouth, claws, Celine's injuries, while CGI took over for high-speed, full-body action shots. The result is that characters never feel too digital, preserving the weight and texture of their performances. Trophy legacy of the VFX. Though Underworld, Evolution may not have been nominated for mainstream VFX awards, it holds a respected place in fan circles for its innovative fusion of horror aesthetics and action effects. It pushed the boundaries of what could be done on a mid-level budget, $45 million, with a dedicated visual effects team. It became a template for future dark fantasy films blending mythology, horror, and modern action, influencing franchises like Resident Evil, The Mortal Instruments, and even The Witcher. White have a checkmark final verdict. The visual effects and CGI in Underworld, Evolution, 2006, are visually cohesive, enhancing the film's brutal, elegant world. Technically impressive, especially in transformation and creature work. Balanced, using digital effects to support, not dominate, the story. Timelessly stylized, avoiding the uncanny valley with smart integration and gothic flair. Despite the limitations of its time, the film remains a benchmark for mid-2000s fantasy horror visuals, blending practical artistry with digital innovation in a way that still resonates with genre fans today. Underworld, Evolution, 2006, Set Design and Locations. Milky Way introduction to the world building. In Underworld, Evolution, the set design is not merely a backdrop, it is an essential character in itself. Director Len Wiseman, along with production designer Patrick Totopoulos, constructs a world that is both mythic and immersive, blending ancient vampire lore with modern gothic horror. The film's settings, ranging from icy mountains and medieval ruins to underground laboratories and forests, help expand the visual scope of the Underworld franchise, all while remaining true to its dark, brooding aesthetic. Abandoned House hash the Gothic foundations, castles, crypts, and sanctuaries. One of the defining elements of the film's set design is its commitment to Gothic architecture and atmosphere. From the very beginning, viewers are immersed in a world of stone-walled fortresses, dark corridors, candlelit catacombs, vampire council chambers adorned with relics and ancient symbols. The interiors often feature weathered stone, wrought iron details, and Baroque ornamentation, evoking a sense of decaying grandeur. These environments are not just for visual flair, they establish the ancient heritage of the vampire clans and reflect their isolation from the modern world. Snowflake hash remote and atmospheric landscapes. Several sequences unfold in desolate, snow-covered wildernesses and alpine forests, which were filmed on location in Vancouver and British Columbia, Canada. These natural settings create a stark contrast to the confined spaces of vampire sanctuaries. The icy fortress where Marcus awakens, surrounded by towering cliffs and icy waters, represents both isolation and power. Snowy woodlands serve as a hunting ground and battlefield, capturing the primal essence of the vampire-lichen conflict. Remote monasteries and mountain lodges are used as hideouts and research centers, blending nature with decay and modern tech. These locations provide not just visual grandeur but also reinforce the themes of exile, secrecy, and the relentless pursuit that define the film's tone. Modern contrasts, labs, caves, and technological spaces. While Underworld, Evolution remains rooted in dark fantasy, it introduces contemporary settings to ground its supernatural story in modern times. Celine and Michael visit abandoned labs and underground bunkers that reflect the scientific side of the vampire-lichen hybrid mythology. High-tech medical equipment, glowing monitors, and sterile corridors juxtapose the supernatural elements with cold realism. These modern sets, though limited, serve to expand the mythos into biological experimentation and ancient bloodlines, echoing themes of science versus immortality. This contrast also emphasizes Celine's internal transformation, as she straddles two worlds, the archaic and the contemporary. Dagger hash props and symbolic details. The film's props are meticulously designed to enhance the historical depth of the narrative. Ancient weapons, such as ornate daggers, steel crossbows, and engraved swords, echo the war between vampires and lichens. Tomes, scrolls, and stone tablets with cryptic symbols serve as both storytelling devices and visual world-building tools. Marcus's transformation coffin and the metallic wings of his evolved form stand out as stunning examples of symbolic prop design, tying character evolution to the physical space. Each item feels handcrafted and lore-rich, helping the audience suspend disbelief in this mythic, alternate reality. Electric light bulb lighting and color palette of sets. The production lighting complements the set design masterfully. Most sets are bathed in cool blue, gray, and silver tones, contributing to the film's bleak, nocturnal feel. Occasionally, flickering candlelight or red accents in Marcus's lair or vampire crypts introduce visual warmth, used sparingly for emotional or threatening scenes. This color palette consistency ensures that the viewer never feels disoriented, even as the narrative jumps from medieval flashbacks to modern chase sequences. It unifies all the locations under a singular visual identity. Practical versus digital integration. Most of the sets were practically built, especially interiors like crypts, castles, and the vampire chambers. However, to expand scale and depth, digital matte paintings and CG extensions were subtly integrated. For example, the cliffside vampire prison was a partial set enhanced by CGI to give it imposing verticality. The final battle site is a combination of practical rock sets and digital enhancements to show cracking ice and destruction. These hybrid methods allow the film to maintain a tactile, grounded feel while expanding its fantasy scope. Narrative function of locations. Each location in Underworld, Evolution is carefully chosen to reflect the emotional state and character journeys. The cavernous tombs signify buried truths and ancient guilt. The open wilderness represents escape and exposure. The confined castles embody secrecy, tradition, and the burden of legacy. The geography of the film echoes its thematic undercurrents: pursuit, revelation, vengeance, and the struggle between history and change. Gold military medal # final verdict. The set design and locations of Underworld, Evolution, 2006, are integral to its impact. They don't just set the stage, they amplify the film's atmosphere, tension, and mythos. White heavy checkmark key strengths. Immersive Gothic architecture. Beautiful and haunting natural landscapes. Thoughtfully crafted props that enrich lore. Seamless blending of practical and digital elements. Symbolic use of environment to mirror character arcs. In sum, the production design of the film helps transform a supernatural action flick into a visually rich, emotionally laid mythic saga. One that invites viewers to lose themselves in a timeless battle beneath the surface of human history. Underworld, Evolution, 2006. Set design and locations, ultra-detailed analysis. 1. Design philosophy, a fusion of Gothic horror and modern noir. The production design of Underworld, Evolution is a deliberate continuation and expansion of the aesthetic introduced in the first film. The visual tone is cold, medieval, and industrial, grounded in the Gothic horror tradition but layered with 21st-century noir sensibilities. Production designer Patrick Tatopoulos didn't aim for realism. He aimed for visual myth, to create a world where vampires and lichens could exist beneath the surface of modern society. The locations reflect this hybrid mythology: haunted, archaic places built into icy wildernesses or hidden beneath cities, untouched by time. Japanese castle too. Architectural influences, a deeply rooted aesthetic. Tatopoulos and the art department drew inspiration from Eastern European castles, especially Transylvanian and Hungarian forts. Medieval crypts and monastic ruins. Baroque interiors with detailed carvings, columns, and stained glass. Neo-Gothic cathedrals, for vertical scale and atmosphere. German expressionism for angular designs, shadows, and symbolic geometry. This fusion evokes a sense of timeless decay and moral ambiguity. No place feels purely good or evil, just ancient and worn. 3. Major location breakdowns. # Victor's Fortress of Vampire Prison, Ice Fortress. Location, set in a remote, mountainous, snow-covered region. Design, heavy stone architecture, fortified exterior, suspended iron chains, and ancient sealed tombs. Purpose, represents entrapment, legacy, and isolation. Marcus's awakening here symbolizes the resurgence of buried secrets. Symbolism, the cracked tombs and ice foreshadow the narrative's central idea, that old sins never stay buried. Cloud with snow # snowbound forests and remote cabins. Filmed in British Columbia's expansive, untouched wilderness. These spaces are natural, open, and vulnerable, contrasting with the safety of Gothic interiors. The forests often serve as battlegrounds, which ties into primal instincts and the recurring theme of survival. Alexander Corvinus's Shippo archive vessel. A modern twist in the lore, this mobile archive is a mix of military hardware and ancient artifacts. Interior design, warm gold lighting, sterile glass, relic-filled cases, and Baroque motifs. Symbolism. This floating sanctuary is a bridge between the old world and the new, echoing Corvinus's role as the ancient neutral observer. Church crypts, monasteries, and hidden lairs. These reflect the religious undertones of the vampire myth: damnation, eternal sleep, resurrection. The set design here is filled with crosses, decaying murals, ancient sarcophagi, and broken altars. They provide a visual cue of decaying faith and moral ambiguity, both of which define Celine's internal conflict. Cityscape # modern underground facilities and laboratories. Minimalist, sterile, and drenched in blue lighting. These sets highlight the scientific manipulation of myth, connecting supernatural evolution with human ambition. The contrast between tech and tombs gives the film a biotechnological horror edge. Hammer and wrench # 4. Production techniques and practical effects. Practical set construction. The team constructed several key interiors, like the vampire crypts, Marcus's tomb, and the monastery hideout, on sound stages with extensive practical detail. Texture and material choice: stone, steel, aged wood, crumbling mortar, and real snow assault for icy terrain enhanced realism. Use of water and fire. Water features, like flooded chambers and snowy caves, were incorporated to reflect fluidity, rebirth, and danger, while fire, torches, burning debris, was used sparingly to mark chaos and turning points. Artist Palette 5. Color theory in set design. The set palette stays consistent with blue-grays, silver, black, and the occasional use of deep red to symbolize blood, power, or heritage. These cool tones support the idea of a cold war between species, a world deprived of warmth, where emotion is buried under instinct and history. Red is only used in dramatic lighting or symbolic spaces, such as Marcus's chambers or in moments of violence. Repeat button 6. Continuity from first film versus evolution. While Underworld, 2003, kept things tight and urban, evolution widens the scope, opening the world up to rural wilderness, ancient fortresses, and airborne sanctuaries. The world feels older and grander, as if the mythology is deepening. Set design helps accomplish that narrative growth. Round pushpin 7. Symbolism through environment. Each set is purposefully designed to reflect deeper ideas. Location symbolism. Ice fortress entrapment, ancient secrets resurfacing. Forest and caves instinct, exposure, survival. Corvinus's ship balance, knowledge, neutrality. Crypt's death, resurrection, broken faith. Lab's science tampering with nature, evolution. Mountain lodge shelter, temporary peace, looming threat. #8. Comparative notes, other franchises. Unlike Blade, which leans urban tech, Underworld, evolution ups for nature versus decay. Compared to Van Helsing, it feels more claustrophobic and mythically grounded. The film's sets share a visual lineage with The Crow, Bram Stoker's Dracula, and Pan's Labyrinth in tone and detail. Final thoughts, the set design legacy. Set design in Underworld, evolution is both world-building and character development. It externalizes internal conflict, enriches the mythology, and provides a rich Gothic texture that grounds the action in a living, breathing history. This isn't just a visual world. It's a history told in stone, ice, and shadow. Every location contributes meaningfully to the narrative's sense of fate, secrecy, and evolution, making the film feel like a moving mural of a centuries-old war playing out beneath modern eyes. Underworld, Evolution, 2006. Dialogue and script, in-depth analysis. Speaking head in silhouette #1. Tone and language style. The script of Underworld, Evolution continues the franchise's tradition of elevated, formal dialogue, reflecting the ancient, aristocratic nature of its vampire characters and the deep-rooted mythology at play. The language is often stylized, deliberately theatrical, and even Shakespearean in its cadence, fitting for a story steeped in centuries-old feuds, betrayal, and destiny. Celine, for instance, speaks with measured, icy authority, conveying centuries of battle-hardened experience. Marcus, the vampire elder, speaks in a commanding, poetic tone, full of wrath and purpose. Even supporting characters use precise, impactful language, with very little room for casual speech or humor. This choice sets a consistent dramatic tone, immersing the audience in a world where every word carries history and weight. Speech Balloon 2. Memorable and thematic dialogue. Despite the action-heavy narrative, the film's script offers lines that resonate emotionally and thematically. These include moments that reflect on loss, identity, power, legacy, and evolution. Fire example lines. Celine, I have no one left. No reason to go on. A quiet line that reveals her isolation and deep emotional exhaustion, highlighting the existential cost of eternal war. Marcus, the future is no longer yours to decide. It is mine. Reflects the core theme of reclaimed power and rewritten destiny. Alexander Corvinus, you are the future. Your blood is the key. Our key moment that ties together myth, biology, and prophecy, showing how the script fuses scientific and spiritual language. While Underworld, Evolution doesn't rely on excessive exposition. It uses dialogue to suggest backstory and amplify mythological gravitas, rather than spoon-feed the viewer. 3. Script structure and delivery. The screenplay by Danny McBride and director Len Wiseman builds upon the dense lore introduced in the first film. The dialogue is written with world-building in mind. References to the Covenant, the Immortals, and the Corvinus bloodline are woven in naturally. Conversations between characters frequently involve ancient secrets, betrayals, and shifting alliances. Unlike typical action thrillers, Underworld avoids modern slang, reinforcing the timeless, operatic nature of its universe. There is a mythic weight to nearly every conversation, making the script feel closer to a fantasy epic than a modern action film. Broken Heart 4. Emotional weight and relationship dynamics. The script allows moments of emotional intimacy to break through the gothic tension. The evolving relationship between Celine and Michael is communicated through sparse but emotionally charged lines. Their bond is based more on shared trauma and mutual protection than flirtation. Their quiet conversations, especially scenes where Celine opens up about her past, stand out in contrast to the action and help humanize both characters. These scenes aren't melodramatic. They are subtle, restrained, and effective in grounding the supernatural stakes in human emotion. #5. Antagonist dialogue. Marcus as Gothic villain. The villainous dialogue of Marcus, one of the most compelling elements of the film, is layered with biblical fury and personal vendetta. He doesn't speak like a modern antagonist but like a fallen angel reclaiming dominion. They used us, betrayed us, but we shall be gods. His lines express a worldview shaped by eternal imprisonment and betrayal, giving him a tragic edge. He's not merely evil, he's a wounded sovereign. Crossed Swords #6. Wit and wordplay. Unlike Marvel-style action films or traditional buttercop thrillers, Underworld, Evolution is largely devoid of quippy humor. The film stays serious, brooding, and poetic in tone. The wit, where it appears, is dry, sardonic, and subtle, often buried in layered meanings or bitter truths. This tonal consistency might limit broad appeal, but it preserves the mythic, immersive quality of the story world. Writing hand #7. Script weaknesses, if any. While the script is rich in lore and thematic weight, some viewers may find exposition-heavy moments, where characters explain mythology mid-action, though these are usually well integrated. A lack of modern relatability in speech, which might distance casual viewers. Minimal use of contemporary emotional language, which could make character arcs feel cold or underplayed for some. However, these are conscious stylistic choices designed to immerse the audience in a gothic fantasy realm. Performing Arts 8. Dialogue as world building. Perhaps the strongest aspect of the script is how it uses dialogue to expand the mythos. Names like Corvinus, Victor, and William are spoken like ancient legends. Discussions of bloodlines, curses, and immortality aren't just functional. They deepen the moral and philosophical questions of the narrative. Dialogue becomes a vehicle of lore as much as emotion. Whiteheaver checkmark final verdict. The dialogue in Underworld, Evolution is elegantly composed, thematically dense, and stylistically consistent with its gothic noir world. It may not be filled with quotable one-liners for casual viewers, but it's rich with mythic resonance, emotional depth, and carefully constructed character dynamics. It's not just what they say, it's how they say it, in a world built on eternal bloodlines and ancient war. Underworld, Evolution, 2006. Dialogue and script, ultra-detailed analysis. Performing Arts 1. Script as mythology building. One of the most striking aspects of Underworld, Evolution, is how the dialogue serves the mythology. The screenplay doesn't just move the plot forward. It expands an ancient world of vampires, werewolves, lycans, and immortals with every word spoken. Unlike many genre films where exposition feels forced, this script allows the mythos to unfold organically through character interactions, flashbacks, and confrontations. When Marcus speaks about his brother William, or his father Alexander Corvinus, he doesn't just inform, he proclaims. His words echo like Gothic scripture, grounding the film's fantasy elements in a biblical sense of fate and prophecy. When Alexander Corvinus says, "We are the beginning, and now, you are the end," it's not just poetic, it's myth-defining. This line encapsulates the film's evolutionary theme, blending immortality with legacy. Impact. The dialogue acts as both narrative scaffolding and philosophical commentary, drawing viewers into a layered universe that feels ancient, cursed, and inevitable. Bust in Silhouette 2. Character voice and verbal identity. Every main character in the film speaks with a unique tone that reflects their personality, background, and emotional state. Celine, Kate Beckinsale. Her dialogue is sparse, controlled, and emotionally repressed, echoing her long history of isolation and betrayal. She rarely speaks unless necessary, and when she does, it's with precision and quiet strength. She uses action to express herself more than language, but when she opens up, like in her conversations with Michael, we see cracks in her armor. Example: "Everything I've lived for is gone. Now I live for him." This line summarizes her entire emotional arc, from solitary assassin to protector and lover. Michael, Scott Speedman. As a hybrid, part lichen, part vampire, Michael is still discovering who he is. His dialogue reflects confusion, questioning, and instinctual responses. He's more reactive than philosophical. He uses more natural, modern speech, subtly highlighting his human origins. Marcus, Tony Curran. Marcus's lines are steeped in religious language, vengeance, and dominance. His monologues reflect the fury of a being who has been robbed of power for centuries and now seeks to rewrite the hierarchy of immortals. He often quotes history like a judge delivering a verdict, cold, righteous, and theatrical. Example: I was the first, the strongest. It is my right. This isn't just a boast. It's a demand to reclaim divine rule. 3. Exposition techniques, elegant, never overloaded. Given the film's complex lore, the script had the difficult task of explaining mythology without pausing the story. It accomplishes this by embedding history in dialogue, often during emotionally charged moments. Using action-based storytelling, where lore is revealed through confrontation, e.g., Marcus attacking Victor's tomb or interrogating Andreas Tanis. Supporting characters, like Tanis, the historian, are given expository roles, but their interactions are laced with fear, sarcasm, and power plays, making the exposition feel organic and motivated by survival. Musical score 4. Thematic writing and dialogue. The film explores heavy themes such as power and corruption. Dialogue reflects how those in power, Marcus, Victor in flashbacks, abuse it in the name of bloodlines and purity. Legacy and transformation. Lines like Alexander's "Your blood is the future" touch on biological destiny and the passing of ancient power to a new generation, Celine and Michael. Humanity versus monstrosity. Michael's struggle to retain his humanity is shown in how he talks, less myth, more conscience, setting him apart from the immortals. Memo 5. Pacing in dialogue. The screenplay is tight and efficient. Most scenes are written with minimal dialogue, allowing visuals, body language, and pacing to do much of the storytelling. This aligns with the film's noir horror atmosphere, where silence builds tension better than over-explaining. Celine often has pauses between lines, letting silence reflect grief or caution. Marcus, by contrast, dominates scenes with dramatic monologues, his words filled with menace. 6. Philosophical undercurrents. Beneath the supernatural action lies a philosophical script. What does it mean to evolve? Celine, I am stronger than I've ever been, but I feel more fear than ever. Can immortals change their destiny, or are they trapped by their past? Marcus, my time was stolen. I will take it back. These lines elevate the script from mere action fare to existential horror, asking what happens when eternal beings finally face change, and whether it's salvation or damnation. 7. Lack of humor, a deliberate choice. There is almost no comedic relief in Underworld, Evolution, and that is intentional. The world is grim, blood-soaked, and operatic, and the dialogue reflects that. The absence of quips or jokes maintains the gothic atmosphere, keeps characters emotionally grounded, allows every line to feel purposeful, even when silent. 8. Final assessment. The dialogue and script of Underworld, Evolution are stylistically rich, emotionally resonant, and designed to support a mythic, gothic tone. While it lacks casual relatability or mainstream humor, it delivers a deep sense of history and tragedy through language. Sharp contrasts between ancient and modern speech to highlight transformation. Characters who speak not as action heroes, but as fallen gods, haunted lovers, and broken kings. This is a script written not just to entertain, but to immerse, mythologize, and provoke reflection on power, legacy, and the fear of change. Underworld, Evolution, 2006. Genre execution, explained in great detail. Clapperboard genre classification. At its core, Underworld, Evolution is a dark action horror fantasy with strong elements of gothic romance, science fiction, and mythological drama. It belongs to a unique cinematic lineage that fuses vampire and werewolf horror tropes, supernatural action thrillers, gothic noir visual and narrative styling, sci-fi elements related to genetics and immortality. In Underworld, Evolution, these genres are not just blended, they are intricately layered, creating a world that feels ancient, stylized, and perpetually on the verge of war. Action horror conventions, followed and enhanced. White heavy checkmark followed conventions. Stylized combat, true to the action horror mold, the film delivers hyper-violent fight sequences, often in slow motion, with supernatural agility and strength. Creature battles. Werewolf versus vampire battles are central, meeting the expectations of monster fans. Blood and gore. The violence is intense but polished. Blood splatters, impalements, and transformations are graphic yet aesthetically framed. Fire enhancements. More verticality and mobility. Characters leap from cliffs, crash helicopters, and transform mid-air. The choreography goes beyond typical horror action and embraces a fantastical physics. Intimate violence. Many action scenes are emotionally charged. Fights between blood relatives, lovers, or traitors, adding dramatic weight to the genre thrills. Horror elements. Minimal but atmospheric. While horror is present, Underworld, Evolution leans more towards supernatural thriller than fear-inducing horror. White heavy checkmark atmospheric horror. Gothic locations, cathedrals, crypts, icy caverns, and ancient tombs add a creeping sense of dread. Monstrous forms. Marcus's transformation into a hybrid bat-winged vampire is grotesque and unsettling. His design evokes classical horror monsters. Historical brutality. Flashbacks to medieval torture and imprisonment amplify the horror of immortality and power abuse. No entry sign, what's missing? The film avoids traditional horror elements like jump scares, psychological suspense, or haunting ambience, choosing instead to keep tension rooted in lore and legacy. Milky Way fantasy and myth, a genre subversion. Here, the film subverts traditional vampire-werewolf mythology by turning it into a high-concept bloodline war with origins in science and destiny, not just folklore. Key innovations. Immortal virus origin. Instead of supernatural magic, vampirism and lycanthropy are explained through genetic mutation, a sci-fi twist that grounds the fantasy in a pseudoscientific realism. Vampire elder hierarchy. The film builds a political system within vampire society, echoing feudal kingdoms, with power passed through bloodlines, betrayal, and manipulation. Scroll mythic structure. The movie's plot follows a mythic cycle. Forgotten gods, Marcus, William, the chosen ones, Selene, Michael, and the fall of ancient houses, Alexander Corvinus's death. This adds Shakespearean weight to what could have been pulp horror. Red Heart / Gothic romance. An often overlooked genre aspect is the film's Gothic romance, especially between Selene and Michael. Their relationship is tragic, passionate, and tied to death, classic Gothic motifs. Selene's transformation into a new breed of immortal is triggered through this romantic bond, giving the action a personal and emotional core. The story is less about saving the world and more about preserving love in the face of extinction, a rare emotional thread in genre cinema of this kind. Neutral face humor, deliberately absent. Unlike many action horror hybrids, like Blade or Van Helsing, Underworld, Evolutionists choose humor entirely. There are no quippy one-liners, no comic relief characters. This tonal choice reinforces the self-serious, operatic atmosphere but also risks feeling overly grim to some audiences. However, this lack of levity is consistent with its Gothic noir aesthetic, where death, vengeance, and eternal war dominate the emotional palette. Scales / genre balance and consistency. Electric light bulb strengths. Marcus, by contrast, dominates scenes with dramatic monologues, his words filled with menace. 6. Philosophical undercurrents. Beneath the supernatural action lies a philosophical script. What does it mean to evolve? Selene, I am stronger than I've ever been, but I feel more fear than ever. Can immortals change their destiny, or are they trapped by their past? Marcus, my time was stolen. I will take it back. These lines elevate the script from mere action fare to existential horror, asking what happens when eternal beings finally face change, and whether it's salvation or damnation. 7. Lack of humor, a deliberate choice. There is almost no comedic relief in Underworld, Evolution, and that is intentional. The world is grim, blood-soaked, and operatic, and the dialogue reflects that. The absence of quips or jokes maintains the Gothic atmosphere, keeps characters emotionally grounded, allows every line to feel purposeful, even when silent. 8. Final assessment. The dialogue and script of Underworld, Evolution are stylistically rich, emotionally resonant, and designed to support a mythic, Gothic tone. While it lacks casual relatability or mainstream humor, it delivers a deep sense of history and tragedy through language. Sharp contrasts between ancient and modern speech to highlight transformation. Characters who speak not as action heroes, but as fallen gods, haunted lovers, and broken kings. This is a script written not just to entertain, but to immerse, mythologize, and provoke reflection on power, legacy, and the fear of change. Underworld, Evolution, 2006. Genre execution. explained in great detail. Clapperboard genre classification. At its core, Underworld, Evolution is a dark action horror fantasy with strong elements of gothic romance, science fiction, and mythological drama. It belongs to a unique cinematic lineage that fuses vampire and werewolf horror tropes, supernatural action thrillers, gothic noir visual and narrative styling, sci-fi elements related to genetics and immortality. In Underworld, Evolution, these genres are not just blended, they are intricately layered, creating a world that feels ancient, stylized, and perpetually on the verge of war. Action horror conventions, followed and enhanced. White heavy checkmark followed conventions. Stylized combat, true to the action horror mold, the film delivers hyper-violent fight sequences, often in slow motion, with supernatural agility and strength. Creature battles. Werewolf versus vampire battles are central, meeting the expectations of monster fans. Blood and gore. The violence is intense but polished, blood splatters, impalements, and transformations are graphic yet aesthetically framed. Fire enhancements. More verticality and mobility. Characters leap from cliffs, crash helicopters, and transform mid-air. The choreography goes beyond typical horror action and embraces a fantastical physics. Intimate violence. Many action scenes are emotionally charged. Fights between blood relatives, lovers, or traitors, adding dramatic weight to the genre thrills. Horror elements, minimal but atmospheric. While horror is present, Underworld, Evolution leans more towards supernatural thriller than fear-inducing horror. White heavy checkmark atmospheric horror. Gothic locations, cathedrals, crypts, icy caverns, and ancient tombs add a creeping sense of dread. Monstrous forms. Marcus's transformation into a hybrid bat-winged vampire is grotesque and unsettling. His design evokes classical horror monsters. Historical brutality. Flashbacks to medieval torture and imprisonment amplify the horror of immortality and power abuse. No entry sign, what's missing? The film avoids traditional horror elements like jump scares, psychological suspense, or haunting ambience, choosing instead to keep tension rooted in lore and legacy. Milky Way fantasy and myth, a genre subversion. Here, the film subverts traditional vampire and werewolf mythology by turning it into a high-concept bloodline war with origins in science and destiny, not just folklore. Key innovations. Immortal virus origin. Instead of supernatural magic, vampirism and lycanthropy are explained through genetic mutation, a sci-fi twist that grounds the fantasy in a pseudoscientific realism. Vampire elder hierarchy. The film builds a political system within vampire society, echoing feudal kingdoms, with power passed through bloodlines, betrayal, and manipulation. Scroll mythic structure. The movie's plot follows a mythic cycle. Forgotten gods, Marcus, William, the chosen ones, Selene, Michael, and the fall of ancient houses, Alexander Corvinus's death. This adds Shakespearean weight to what could have been pulp horror. Red Heart # gothic romance. An often overlooked genre aspect is the film's gothic romance, especially between Selene and Michael. Their relationship is tragic, passionate, and tied to death, classic gothic motifs. Selene's transformation into a new breed of immortal is triggered through this romantic bond, giving the action a personal and emotional core. The story is less about saving the world and more about preserving love in the face of extinction, a rare emotional thread in genre cinema of this kind. Neutral face humor, deliberately absent. Unlike many action horror hybrids, like Blade or Van Helsing, Underworld, Evolutionists choose humor entirely. There are no quippy one-liners, no comic relief characters. This tonal choice reinforces the self-serious, operatic atmosphere but also risks feeling overly grim to some audiences. However, this lack of levity is consistent with its gothic noir aesthetic, where death, vengeance, and eternal war dominate the emotional palette. Scales # genre balance and consistency. Electric light bulb strengths. Underworld, Evolution maintains a coherent genre tone. It knows what it is, a blood-soaked, high-style supernatural war drama. There's no tonal whiplash or confusion. Action, fantasy, horror, and romance are all tightly interwoven, each reinforcing the stakes of the other. Warning sign # limitations. Some critics argue that the film leans so heavily into lore and brooding atmosphere that it alienates viewers seeking conventional horror thrills or emotional levity. Others see the extensive backstory and exposition as genre clutter, though fans of dense mythologies often find it a rewarding layer. Final evaluation, genre execution. From a third-person analytical perspective, Underworld, Evolution is a genre-rich sequel that doubles down on the gothic, fantasy, and action elements that defined the first film, while introducing a more complex, mythological narrative. It respects genre expectations, especially in its stylized combat and dark romance. It subverts certain conventions, especially in its scientific approach to monster lore and its rejection of mainstream humor. It excels at world-building, offering something more operatic, bleak, and mythologically dense than typical genre fare. For viewers craving a grim, stylish blend of lore-heavy action and supernatural intrigue, Underworld, Evolution delivers a fully realized genre experience, one that prioritizes tone, mythology, and tragic heroism over conventional scares or easy thrills. Underworld, Evolution, 2006, Genre Execution, Expanded Breakdown. Performing Arts Genre Fusion, a hybrid masterclass. Underworld, Evolution doesn't just belong to one genre. It's an ambitious hybrid film that draws from at least 6 distinct cinematic traditions. Action, horror, dark fantasy, science fiction, gothic romance, noir thriller. Rather than layering these casually, the film weaves them into a singular world and tone, one that's cold, operatic, tragic, and visceral. Keycap 1 Action Genre Execution. High-octane supernatural action is one of the film's defining pillars. Fight sequences. Combat is brutal and kinetic, featuring a mix of gunfights, hand-to-hand combat, and creature duels. Celine and Marcus's final battle is a highlight, showcasing aerial combat and transformative brutality. Gun ballet and slow motion. Director Len Wiseman employs slow-motion gunplay reminiscent of The Matrix and Equilibrium, but with a darker, bloodier aesthetic. There's a rhythm to these scenes that makes them feel choreographed like a deadly ballet. Pacing and escalation. Action scenes escalate consistently. From the confined shootouts in dark forests to expansive battles in ancient temples and icy fortresses, the film continually raises the stakes and scale. Weapons and gear. Specialized vampire and lichen-killing weapons, UV bullets, silver nitrate, etc., are rooted in the lore, giving action a tactical layer and genre-specific flair. Keycap 2 Horror Genre Execution. While not a traditional horror film, Underworld, Evolution maintains an atmosphere of dread and monstrosity. Body horror. Marcus's transformation into a hybrid vampire bat is disturbing, with visceral mutations and grotesque anatomy. The violence is not only stylish, it's deeply unsettling. Creature horror. William, the first lichen, is a feral, barely human monster. His presence in the final act delivers a primal terror reminiscent of werewolf folklore, but elevated through mythic scale. Setting-based horror. The film features catacombs, abandoned churches, icy crypts, and fog-laced forests, all classic horror settings that deepen tension and immersion. Supernatural fear. Unlike slasher horror, the terror here stems from ancient curses, immortal vendettas, and apocalyptic potential. Keycap 3 Dark Fantasy Genre Execution. The movie leans heavily into dark fantasy, creating a world where ancient bloodlines, forbidden love, and cursed destinies collide. Myth building. The film expands the underworld lore, revealing the origins of vampires, lichens, and their shared ancestor, Alexander Corvinus. This injects a mythic structure akin to Tolkien, George R.R. Martin, or even Greek tragedy. Visual fantasy. The visuals, especially Marcus's leathery wings, glowing vampire eyes, and sweeping gothic landscapes, are soaked in fantasy iconography. Ancient artifacts and symbols. The pendant keys, encrypted journals, and sealed tombs evoke a world shaped by forgotten magic and ancient secrets. Keycap 4 Science fiction elements. Though set in a gothic fantasy world, the Underworld series has always relied on a sci-fi explanation for the supernatural. Genetic origins of vampires and lichens. The immortality virus stems from a mutation in Alexander Corvinus, tying the monsters to biogenetic science rather than sorcery. Hybridization themes. Michael's character, a vampire-a lichen hybrid, represents transhuman potential, a recurring concept in sci-fi. His strength is seen as evolutionary, not magical. Medical horror, blood testing, laboratories, and regeneration point to the idea that monsters are not spiritual, they are biological anomalies. This sci-fi underpinning grounds the fantasy, making it feel modern, clinical, and unique among vampire films. Keycap 5 Gothic Romance. A powerful, often overlooked layer of Underworld, Evolution is its emotional core rooted in tragic romance. Celine and Michael. Their love story is built on trauma, loyalty, and forbidden attraction. It mirrors Beauty and the Beast but with a modern, violent twist. Emotional isolation. Both leads are outsiders, rejected by their kind, and find solace only in each other, a staple of Gothic storytelling. Love as transformation. Celine's transformation at the end, drinking Corvinus's blood, happens not for power, but to protect Michael, elevating the romantic stakes. Keycap 6 noir thriller tone. The storytelling structure echoes that of a noir detective thriller. Dark visuals, blue-tinted filters, night-drenched scenes, silhouettes, everything about the visual language screams noir. Moral ambiguity. No one is purely good or evil. Vampires betray their kin. Werewolves seek justice. Even the ancient Alexander chooses non-interference, making him morally grey. Investigative narrative. Much of the plot is driven by Celine uncovering the truth, through flashbacks, blood memories, and hidden documents, just like a detective piecing together a conspiracy. Bullseye genre mastery. What it gets right. Consistency. The film never strays from its chosen genre tone. Whether it's action or romance, everything is drenched in dark atmosphere and myth. White heavy checkmark world building. Each genre element, be it action, sci-fi, or fantasy, serves the larger world, never feeling forced or disjointed. White heavy checkmark unique identity. There's truly no other franchise that looks, feels, or behaves like Underworld. It's a genre world all its own. Warning sign # genre pitfalls and criticisms. Crossmark self-serious tone. Some viewers feel the lack of humor and constant melodrama makes the film feel too grim or overwrought. Crossmark exposition overload. The myth-heavy narrative, especially for newcomers, can feel like genre saturation, with too much lore and not enough clarity. Crossmark limited character diversity. From a genre convention perspective, the film lacks broader character archetypes like the skeptic, comic relief, or the tragic villain. It's almost entirely built on stoic warriors and power struggles. Pushpin final genre execution verdict. From a third-person analytical perspective, Underworld, Evolution is a genre-blending triumph for those who appreciate dark mythology, stylized violence, and high-concept monster lore. Its commitment to blending horror, fantasy, action, and sci-fi gives it a cinematic identity that is bold, operatic, and unapologetically niche. While it might alienate viewers expecting mainstream thrills, its genre execution rewards fans looking for depth, darkness, and dramatic world-building. Underworld, Evolution, 2006. Social and cultural commentary, in-depth analysis. Performing arts surface narrative versus subtext. At first glance, Underworld, Evolution presents itself as a dark, gothic action horror hybrid focused on vampires, werewolves, and hybrid monsters locked in ancient feuds. However, beneath the gunfire, bloodlines, and fantasy lore lies a surprising layer of symbolic and sociopolitical themes that resonate with real-world issues, especially around power, control, identity, and inherited conflict. Keycap 1 bloodlines and genetic determinism. A central theme in the Underworld franchise, and especially in Evolution, is the idea of inherited identity. How who you are, vampire, lichen, hybrid, human, is dictated by your blood, your family, your origin. This serves as an allegory for class, race, and caste systems in the real world. Celine and Michael's romance, a forbidden union between predator and prey, mirrors social taboos around interracial, intercultural, or cross-class relationships. Marcus and William, twin brothers with opposite destinies, reflect genetic inequality and the way society responds to difference, with fear, imprisonment, or exploitation. The obsession with pure bloodlines among the vampire elders echoes eugenic ideology, xenophobia, and class elitism. These elements resonate with historical and modern concerns about who is considered worthy, powerful, or pure, and challenge the viewer to question rigid boundaries. European Castle Keycap 2 corrupt institutions and cycles of oppression. The vampire hierarchy, led by Victor and then Marcus, represents a corrupt aristocracy, built on lies, revisionist history, and oppression of both humans and lichens. The film critiques ruling powers that rewrite history to suit their agendas, much like authoritarian regimes and colonial empires have done. Victor's betrayal of Celine's family, covered up as righteous vengeance, parallels state-sponsored violence and cover-ups of genocide or cultural erasure. The lichens' historical rebellion against vampire rule serves as a metaphor for enslaved or colonized people rising against their oppressors. But the film complicates this by blurring the line between victim and aggressor. In this way, Underworld, Evolution speaks to generational trauma, historic revisionism, and the ethical cost of maintaining power. Scales #Keycap 3 free will versus predestined roles. Michael, a human turned into a hybrid, becomes a living symbol of breaking from tradition, representing people who reject binary identities or oppressive systems. His struggle is akin to that of mixed-race individuals, LGBTQ+ individuals, or immigrants who don't fit neatly into traditional categories. The hybrid character resists being used as a weapon or pawn in ancient war, instead choosing love and peace, a metaphor for autonomy and agency in a world that wants to define you. Celine, too, upon learning the truth about her vampire father, rejects her role as a loyal death dealer. Her disillusionment with the system she once served can be interpreted as a critique of blind patriotism, institutional loyalty, or ideological indoctrination. Keycap 4: Immortality and Power as Burden. Unlike typical action films that glamorize power, Underworld, Evolution presents immortality not as a gift, but as a curse. Marcus, Victor, and William are depicted not as wise ancient beings but as monsters consumed by ego, vengeance, and control. Alexander Corvinus, the immortal progenitor, is portrayed as a passive observer, perhaps reflecting real-world political neutrality in the face of injustice, i.e., global powers who refuse to intervene in humanitarian crises. The film subtly suggests that unchecked longevity and power lead to moral decay, detachment, and desensitization, a warning about political dynasties, inherited wealth, and lifelong rule. Keycap 5: Commentary on Extremism and Polarization. The world of Underworld is built on binary oppositions: vampire versus lichen, human versus monster, hybrid versus pureblood. But Evolution questions these binaries. It reflects a society locked in generational hatred, where children inherit war from their ancestors, echoing real-world ethnic, sectarian, or nationalist conflicts, e.g., Israel-Palestine, Balkan Wars, tribal disputes. The film ultimately suggests that peace and progress only come from hybridization, from integration, and from individuals who step outside of inherited ideologies. This message is subtle but powerful. War continues when people refuse to see each other as more than their labels. Bullseye: How effective is the commentary? Woven into the story, the social commentary is not delivered in dialogue-heavy exposition or speeches. It's woven into character arcs, conflicts, and the world's structure. White heavy checkmark: Subtextual and symbolic. The film trusts viewers to read into the symbols, hybrids, ancient clans, hidden truths, rather than spelling out its messages. White heavy checkmark: Emotionally resonant. The pain Celine and Michael face in defying their destinies resonates with real-world struggles against systemic prejudice, historical injustice, and identity politics. Crossmark: Not always accessible. The depth of the commentary may be lost on casual viewers due to the film's dense mythology and relentless pacing. Crossmark: Underdeveloped secondary characters. Because so much of the symbolism rests on Celine and Michael, supporting characters who might further the thematic complexity are underutilized. End with left arrow above final assessment. From a third-person critical perspective, Underworld, Evolution may not advertise itself as a political or socially reflective film, but its mythology and world-building carry rich allegories. It subtly critiques power structures, inherited hate, institutional corruption, and the danger of binary identities, all while telling a tragic love story set against a war-torn supernatural backdrop. Its commentary is symbolic rather than didactic, making it more powerful for those willing to look beneath the surface. Underworld, Evolution, 2006. Audience engagement, in-depth breakdown. Keycap 1: Emotional resonance and high-stakes drama. From the opening scene, Underworld, Evolution establishes a visceral and urgent tone. The emotional weight stems from the personal stakes at play, particularly through the lens of Celine, Kate Beckinsale, and Michael, Scott Speedman. Their forbidden love, a vampire and a hybrid struggling against centuries of war and betrayal, resonates with themes of alienation, rebellion, and identity, making their journey emotionally compelling to audiences. Celine's backstory, her family's betrayal,